Welcome everybody to this evening session, which is being hosted by, which is being presented to us by Nana Amo Boache. Am I saying that right, Auntie?
Boakyewa.
Boakyewa. Excuse me. Nana Amo Boakyewa is a native of Jeffersonville, Indiana, but in her early years, she migrated to Washington, D.C., first for school at Howard University, followed by employment at Amtrak. It was in Washington, D.C. that she was introduced to the Akom tradition. She was introduced to the Akom tradition, trained and graduated in 1981 with Okomfo and Nana Parry Deni Zulu I. Nana Ama later moved to New York, continued at Amtrak, but also became a public educator in the African Burial Ground Project, ancestral archaeological anthropological site in Lower Manhattan. She was inspired to formalize her profession in anthropology and returned to Indiana to pursue further education at the University of Louisville in Pan-African Studies, Anthropology, and doctoral training in Anthropology African Studies at Indiana University Bloomington, which support Fulbright Hayes Dissertation Research Abroad grant. She investigated religious pluralism within the cultural complex of Latte, Ghana, located in Aquapem Hills of the Eastern region. Her dissertation specifically explores how Guan and Akan cultures are enacted by the shrines and priesthood to create a unique pluralism. She has extensive and diverse teaching experience in cultural anthropology, the anthropology of religion, gender studies, global health in all aspects of the politics, history, culture, and religion of the African diaspora. Her most recent investigation, 2017, pursues applied medical anthropology as she questions the social cultural reasons for late presentation of breast cancer among Ghanaian women. Nana Ama will involve the students in Long Beach City College in this research and envision the future study abroad to the Peace and Love Hospital in Kumasi, Ghana for hands-on experience. So, Nana Ama, we welcome you. We're looking forward to the information that you have to share with us. For you guys who have never heard her present before, you're in for a wonderful, wonderful treat. It's some really, really good information you're gonna get here. So without further ado, I'd like to present to you Nana Ama.
Thank you, everybody. Nice to have you here today. I'm gonna just go right into the PowerPoint, but I'm just gonna give a little bit of a encapsulation, abbreviated summary of what I did when I went into the field. I went into the, as a part of getting an anthropology advanced degree, one of the things you have to do is you have to spend an extended period of time in a particular community around the globe. The thing is for you to go to classes, pass your qualifying exams, and then you're gonna look for money so that somebody, one of these institutions, social science research, Fulbright Hayes, one of these funding places will send you overseas to do your field work. You have to go for a minimum of 1 year. And some people, if they can get the funding, they go 2 years, 3 years. And even after you finish that first initial session, if you can get that money, you can go back into the field and do some more, because you never finish that first place where you went into the field. My first place was at Latte, Ghana. And I didn't exactly know what I was gonna find there. I knew that I wanted to look into this priest complex that we're all so familiar with, but I wanted to look at its place of origin, to learn the history, to learn how everything worked, to learn how priests and priestesses work together in Latte, Ghana. So that's what I did. In 2008, I went in January, and I stayed until December of 2008. And I went in January because the first thing I wanted to experience was the Surgery Festival. And so that was the very first thing that I experienced. One way that anthropologists in the field get to know who they're going to be talking to is you do what we call a snowball sampling. I knew if I went to the Surgery Festival, I'm going to meet a lot of priests and priestesses connected to the shrine, and I'm going to be able to get names, phone numbers, and then I'll just go from there, and it will just snowball because the more people I interview, they're going to tell me, well, go here, talk to this person, talk to this priest. And that's what we did. Talk to this herbalist, because it wasn't just priests I talked to. I talked to herbalists, I talked to bone setters, I talked to a Chinese, I talked to a Brafo, I talked to anybody and everybody that's related to the shrine. I talked to people who had gotten work at the shrine. I talked to people who were priests and then they dropped priesthood and became a Christian. I talked to people that were Christians and dropped Christianity and became an Okomfo. So I had at least 200 to 250 people that I interviewed. Every 3 or 4 days, I was moving somewhere to go somewhere to talk to somebody. I was facilitated because the school that I chose to go to, Indiana University, had Tree as a core language. They had a lot of Ghanaians there that were teaching and a lot of people who had already done research in Ghana. So I figured if I go to some place like that, that'll facilitate me going, getting entree into where I was going. Luckily, I talked to somebody, one of my classmates was from Aquapim, and he suggested that I employ one of his best friends as a research assistant. And basically I had 4 years of Tree during the time that I was in school. So Tree was not a problem. But remember, I'm going to Latte, and the first language taught in the home in Latte is Guan. I didn't know Guan. It's a whole different language, okay? It doesn't have any connection to Tree whatsoever. So I got in touch with Wahene. He not only helped me with Guan interpretation and translation, but he also provided me a place to stay. And I didn't stay up at the main shrine because, as we know, there's no secrets in Ghana. And people had already told me, don't stay up at the main shrine. They're going to get in your business. So I didn't. I stayed down the road in Ahanasi. I don't know whether y'all know that there's 2 different lattes. Ahanasi, they call it the down, and then Kubasi, which is where the shrine is. Okay? So let me see if I can do this screen sharing and it works for us. Okay, so let me go to play from the start. Okay, y'all can see that? You can see it?
Yes, I can see it.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Okay, so today, the main thrust of my dissertation was talking about pluralism and priesthood. So what I mean by pluralism in this sense is the fact that there's a lot of things, there's two main languages that we're talking about going on here in Latte. There's 2 systems, 2 sacred systems that are going on, because you have the Guan system that has actually overlapped with the Akan system. We really only kind of emphasize the Akan system, but the Guan system, like I said, Guan is the first language taught in the home, and then there's a Guan system that's in place for the Akonade shrine itself, and then you also have the Akan deities. I know when I went into Latte in 2008, I had been there before, but I never noticed there are 2 Akonade shrines in Latte, okay? because if you come in through the Ahanasi way, you're going to go up the hill going towards the shrine that we're familiar with, and you're going to see a sign that says it just like it says here, the Okonade Shrine Headquarters. Okay, so there's there's supposedly one authentic shrine and then another branch shrine, but I'll tell you a little bit more about that later, how that particular branch shrine that's in Ahanasi came to be. Okay, of course, this is Nana Oparebea. We all know her as the world traveler that she became. She was made by Nkrumah in 1962, the head of the Ghana Traditional and Psychic Healing Society in 1962. But in order for Nkrumah to get her into Accra, because remember at Okonade does not travel and does not want her chief priestess to travel either. So Nkrumah had to actually humble himself and come into Latte to the elders, to the Asafo. He had to bring 21 sheep. He had to bring drinks. He had to bring money. He did it at 2 in the morning, just like everybody else. He did not, he was president then. He did not try to cut any corners. And he went through the whole rituals so Nana Oparebea could travel to Latte, travel to Accra to participate in that organization, because that organization was his traditional religious branch of his new government and what he was trying to do to restore Pan-Africanism, not just in Ghana, but around the continent as well. Okay. Actually, I saw Nana Oparebea a week before she passed away in 1995. I was there, I think Kabibi and I were there on a trip. Kabibi had already left the country and I was in Accra just sort of chilling out and waiting for my flight. And I said, should I go up there and say goodbye to Nana Oparebea? And I said, oh, okay, go ahead. So I was by myself. I went up on a trotro and I saw her, greeted her. She was laughing. She was talking. She didn't seem like she was sick. That was around the 19th of November, 1995. When I got back 1 week later, she passed away. And everybody said, was she sick? How was she? I said, she seemed fine to me. Okay, so here's a picture of her. I don't think Nana Urenchi's on here today, but this is Nana Urenchi. This is Nana Afua. I think this is Nana Sechi, which was her main Abrafo for years. And I'm not sure who the Achimi is here in this particular picture, which brings us to the funeral process, okay? So that's what's gonna happen in this life cycle of the priests and priestesses, okay? So in terms of how many funerals did I go to in Ghana? Because we all know that funerals are really, really big in Ghana. I went to the funerals of four priests, okay? The one that I'm going to talk about in this presentation and tell you more in detail about is Okomfo Badua. And she is from Shriawu Besiase, which is in the Ashanti region. That was in April of 2008. Big funeral, because she had a big turnout from all of the Okonade priests, because she was an Asurgery priest connected to the Okonade shrine. So it was a big turnout. I would say 200 to 300 people. Now remember, her family is Christian. So here comes the plurality. Not only are they giving her a send-off within the priest community, all of the family members who are Christian or most of them are Christian, are giving her the send-off too. So they're sort of like having to divide the space. Now, since she was a priest, they gave priority to her priest funeral rites, because you do not want to mess with deities when you're burying your family member, even though you might be Christian yourself. Everybody in Ghana understands the power of the deities. In fact, I had a priest tell me, in fact, at this very funeral, she said, people fear the deities more than they fear God. And I heard it said over and over again. You know, you give to Caesar what is Caesar's, which is Christianity, and you give to God what is God, which is the tradition. Okay? So I heard it said on many, many levels from many, many people. The second funeral that I went to, and that's the reason why I mentioned that there is an alternative Akonade shrine at Ahenase. It was of an elder woman, Nana Aboakyewa. Now, there was a succession of priests, you know, in the history that ranged from Nana Jo, who was the first one to possess a Akonade. Hello? Okay. And then there was a whole succession of people, mainly 4 people that inherited the shrine as a priestess died at Akonade.
You're going to session B, which is the one for the drumming.
Okay. Kwesi, I can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. So, so what happened is Nana Aboakyewa had married one of the former priests of the Akonade shrine. She had married the son of a former priest at the main Akonade shrine at Kubasi. Okay, in the process of that, she inherited some of the regalia, some of the, you know, not a shrine really, but some implements she inherited, but she was not trained as an Akonade priest. She actually had a ghost shrine. She had 2 particular ghosts that she was in charge of. But what they wanted to do, quite frankly, is they wanted to make money off of branding themselves as the Akonade shrine. So I was really surprised when I went into Latte that first day and I saw this Akonade shrine headquarters, and I'm saying, wait a minute, this isn't Kubasi. Why is that so? So I went on up to Kubasi, you know, introduced myself there, got situated there, and then I got to, you know, understand that Nana Aboakyewa, you know, and the people in Ahenase, because, you know, there's this feud between Kubasi and Ahenase, okay? So they wanted to sort of like make sure that they could cash in, if you say, or get chop money for people that came in looking for the Akonade shrine. And if you come in at the right spot, that's the first one you're going to see, and you think you're at the authentic Akonade shrine. I mean, I talked to one priest who, when her and her family came looking for the Akonade shrine, they stopped at Ahenase, and they didn't get up to the real shrine for 2 months. And you know, it was all unraveled then. So we had this, we have the funeral that we went to in the Ashanti region was in April. Nana Aboakyewa's funeral, big funeral, because she was supported by somebody who had been working overseas. So she was able to help support the funeral for Nana Aboakyewa. That was in May. And then there was another priestess in Latte who was an elder priestess. She didn't have a big following. She had been sick. And instead of having a really big funeral, this was more like a very local funeral. I went to that as well. It's not going to be as elaborate as the one I'm going to describe you that Badua's funeral in in the Ashanti region. It was in 7 days. You know, there's a whole process that you have to go through that I'm going to talk about in a little while. But she passed away and she was buried within 7 days. You know, they have this tradition now of taking people to the mortuary, keeping them in the fridge to preserve the body. But according to tradition, that's not supposed to happen. Any preservation of the body that's done is supposed to be done by herbs. They're not supposed to go into the mortuary. They're not supposed to go in the fridge, not supposed to have any embalming, that kind of thing. And that's the way this funeral was. Very small, very, you know, much a local funeral for local people who appreciated her and appreciated her work. Then the biggest funeral of all, and a lot of you might have heard of him or actually knew him or worked with him, is Numo Isaac Ahia. Numo Isaac Ahia is an herbalist, or was an herbalist of high regard and well-renowned.
Aiko.
All over, you know, all over Ghana and other places. He had people that he trained in the UK, people that he trained and worked with in the United States. And let me tell you the story about the power of Numo. Numo, I knew that I needed to talk to Numo because he was up in age. So as soon as the Surgery Festival was over, I told my research assistant, the next place we have to go to is Numo. Numo is, his place was in Bubashi, Accra. So it was kind of a long way, you know, to get there from Latte. But we went, we talked to him one time, he, you know, and we taped it. It was historic because he has a long record of serving government officials, regular people. He's very humble. He serves people all over the region and all, you know, in different places around the world. So we talked to him. We had three interviews with Numo. And then this was in February. And then I think at the end of April, correct me if I'm wrong, those who know, or the beginning of May, Numo called all of his people from around the world together, all the people he had trained. He called them from the UK. He called them from the United States. He called all of his people together for his birthday at the end of May.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, it's the 28th, right?
I thought it was like May 8th. So
okay,
it's either the 28th or the 8th.
He called everybody there to come for May. And then he died on purpose. That's
on his birthday.
On his birthday. So he had everybody there for his funeral. And that was one of the biggest, I mean, I went to the funeral, it was like a state funeral, like the president of Ghana or the Asante Henny or somebody had passed away. It went on for blocks, 4 or 5 blocks. I have never seen so many chiefs together in one place. In a casket in the shape of a leaf because he was a master. He was a master. He was a master of herbalism. Okay, he kept patients at his house, came in like it was a hospital. You know, he was very powerful. So the last funeral that I went to was there. Okay, now one thing that I also want to say is that funerals are a critical time for everybody, but a funeral and death itself is like 3 rituals in one. It's a crisis ritual because the family has suffered a crisis, and people are going to be upset. You know, everything has been turned upside down with a particular family member's death, no matter how old you are. It's also a rites of passage. In other words, you're going from the state of living to the state of dying. So there's a whole set of rituals for your rites of passage that has to be done to make sure your trip to the land of the ancestors is successful. And the third ritual that death and the funeral is a social rite of intensification. That means your family has to stick together to the point that your relations within that family are going to be intensified, because you're going to have to stick together to grieve, to, you know, to compensate for the loss of this family member. Okay? And it's going to have to be in the collective best interest. Okay.
Ms. Culture?
Yes.
Ms. Culture, Nana, this is Omodun. I just wanted to also share that when, and you were there, then when Numo passed, and they brought his body back to the compound, but when they had him on the stretcher, they were trying to take him in the house where we all stayed.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to take him into the room that was next to the house where we all stayed.
Yes.
When they tried to take his body there on the stretcher, it kept making them go back to his house, and it rocked and rocked and rocked and rocked and rocked, and they literally had to fight to get his body, you know, to the room where, you know, people would come and witness, you know, people had to come and witness that he had actually crossed. But it was amazing, sit there and watch and see these men fighting with him on a stretcher, trying to get his body where they wanted to go. And he wanted to go back to his room, I guess, in his room.
I'm glad you said that, because I didn't see that part. I think I came in after that.
Oh, okay.
That's Numo.
Yup.
That's Numo. You know, powerful, powerful, powerful man.
For sure, no doubt.
Okay. But thank you for sharing that, Omodun. So what I'm going to do is explain to you how the 3 stages that the funeral goes through. Let me see if I can do this next slide. Okay, the 3 stages. Let me tell you what those are right now. So the first stage is the death itself. What you are supposed to do is, if you know that someone is ailing and there's a possibility that they could die, somebody is supposed to keep a vigil at that person's bedside, because the requirement when the person dies is somebody has to be there to give them their last drink of water. Okay, that is required. Okay, that happens in stage 1. Also in stage 1, and the reason why that has to happen, and then the other part of stage 1, first is the drink of water. Then you don't tell anybody that the person has died, okay? Death is a sacred time for the family. So that means it has to be shrouded in secrecy, okay? Because if it's not shrouded in secrecy, you don't know if somebody's gonna do something to send certain energies you know, or even participate in foul play against the family or against the person who has just died. They're very vulnerable in those first minutes, hours, days when they pass away. Okay, so everything is kept a secret. Even among the family, they say things like what they call euphemisms. You don't want to say, such and such a person has died. You say, a mighty tree has fallen. Um, um, he or she has gone to his village. Okay, he or she could not wake up from their sleep. Okay, and then for the chiefs and the queen mothers, then that's when you say a mighty tree has uprooted. Okay, the second part of stage one is the family meets immediately as soon as they can, and they start making up these committees of who's going to do certain things, who is going to be the one that's going to attend to the body. They figure that out. They decide, are they going to go to the mortuary or not? Are we going to keep them home and do herbal? Okay, because there are herbs that you can have to preserve the body. They can find a cool place in the compound, or they don't have to take it to the mortuary, okay? Then you have to start notifying family members, and you do that all in secrecy. Because you don't want, you don't want to, have anybody coming in and doing any foul play, any witchcraft or a curse, or what the people I talk to call evil doing. You don't want that to happen. Okay, so you notify out-of-town lineage members, you notify lineage members that are in the area. You start bringing together sacrifice for the immediate rites. We know that in Ghana, they delay a funeral for months to make sure that they can prepare for a good funeral, a good send-off. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But then the committees are getting together, to handle everything that needs to be done on an immediate basis. They're going to decide, are we going to keep the body at home? Are we going to send it to the mortuary? Okay. Okay, traditionally, just like that elder priest I told you about in Latte, she was totally preserved with herbs only, okay? No embalming there. So then you have to talk to the distant relatives so they can formulate a travel plan. That's why they delay the funeral sometimes, because people are coming from overseas sometimes. People are coming from other parts of Ghana. People are coming from other countries. So they have to make sure that any family member that wants to come and pay their final respects, that is allowed a chance to do so. Okay? Then stage two is the actual funeral itself. And because all of this in stage one is the preparation stage. When you come to the actual funeral itself, that's stage two. And this is the stage that becomes what we see today in Ghana as these elaborate kind of funerals that are very much where the family is trying to improve their status in the community by having a really good funeral performance for their family members, okay? So it's two things that are happening in stage two. The family is performing the funeral, the best funeral they can, okay? And that means they might have to borrow money. Rural banks and commercial banks. Families go to these banks and get big sums of money to make sure that they can have a funeral that everyone will be talking about. And I call that part of the funeral sort of like the profane, kind of showy part of the death. The sacred part of the death is when they actually do the funeral according to the rites that have been determined by that person's station in life. Maybe they're a chief, maybe they're a Busia Painin, they're a queen mother, they're a priest or priestess, they're an Achime, whatever it is. There are certain traditional rites that are very sacred that help to create this ancestor that we want to help us from the other side. And that's the part you cannot mess with. You might be able to do this big fancy funeral and have a lot of show and have bands and dancing caskets and everything like that, you know, but that's the profane part. That's the part that, you know, okay, you want to have that part, okay, you can have it, but you cannot skimp on the sacred part. You cannot skimp on the rituals. You cannot skimp on the sacrifices. You cannot skimp on anything that you're supposed to be doing to make sure that you're creating an ancestor that's going to be able to help you from the other side. Okay? So part 2 is when they actually have the funerals, and funerals then are multifaceted. Okay, and I'm going to give you a quote from my paper, and I think this is from one of my sources. The many events of the funeral provide occasions for family reunion, therapeutic expressions of anger and grief, mutual consolidation, healing of strained relationships, courtship, social political succession, transmission and creation of knowledge, historical commentary, and performance of verbal and gestural art, music, and dance. So a funeral is very multifaceted, and there's a lot going on at a funeral. It's like looking at an iceberg, and there's much more under the surface of the water than you think it is. It's doing so many things on so many levels. It's promoting the family status as well as creating that ancestor that we talked about. And there's another quote I want to give you from a proverb, and it says, "Death does not like money." So it means that no matter how much money that you put into the funeral, money can't destroy the social bonds when greed and envy overcome lineage loyalty. In other words, your first responsibility is your family. Okay, and you know, even though they have this elaborate, lavish show that they want to make, they want people to be envious of their family members, of their family, and so they want people to say, "Wow!" They want them to come away and say things like, "Was it well attended? Was it exciting?" Okay, no family wants to fail at having a large gathering with a dynamic showcase of opulence and decorum. Ironically, society continues to practice what it condemns, with funerals being more social than religious, because people are going to funerals to dress up, Saturday is funeral day. So everybody's going everywhere on a Saturday in Ghana to go to some sort of funeral. But it's where you go and get a husband or a wife, where you go and make business associations, okay? But like I said before, you cannot forget that there's a sacred part of it too. And that's what they call the respect for the dead. Okay, so on the sacred side, Ghanaians isolate the dead as they leave the material world and enter the spirit world. Yet the physical dead body is appropriated to enact the appearance of family success and to perpetuate this keeping up with wealth and rank. Okay, so that's the second part. So what we're doing here then is we're looking at the last rites of Okomfo Badua, and on we traveled that day in April of 2008. Everybody traveled to her village on a Wednesday. By Thursday, they brought the body. I think that she had been taken to the mortuary. Okay, they brought the body, and that's when the priest basically started taking the lead to make sure that they had prepared their Okomfo for burial. Okay, the family takes part, but actually the priest are taking the lead. And there were, I don't know, it was in the Ashanti area, so there were at least 20 to 25 priests and priestesses that came from not only the Ashanti area, but from Larte and from other places in Ghana. If a priest could travel, they did travel to, they always traveled to the funeral of another priest. Okay, so that first day on Thursday, the body comes in, it's washed. They did not let me participate in that particular ceremony because I didn't know her really well. I was there as a guest, and they wanted to, they sort of closed ranks among the priest at that particular time. Okay. The next stage we're going to is, well, what I want to do also is to tell you that this is Okomfo Badua's Abusia. Okay, this is her maternal family members. And the man with the cane, he's the Abusia Paini. Okay, there was a little bit of I can't say a little bit, there was tension between the Okomfo, who were taking the lead for the funeral, and the Abusia. They are Christian, okay? But what they did was they sort of divided the space because the funeral took place at Okomfo Badua's compound, and she was pretty successful as a priest. She had been doing a lot of healing. She had been a priest for a long time. I think she passed away due to complications from diabetes. Okay, so she had a big family, and she also had a big priest community that was behind her as well. So the priests were wanting to make sure that all of the rites for Badua were done according to the rules determined by the shrine, because they didn't want to take any chances of, not doing this right, okay? But the family were since the family were the ones that were having to finance it, they were constantly trying to cut corners. And, so it was a constant kind of battle between the priest community, the priest family, and the Abusia, okay? So they didn't want to do all the sacrifices that needed to be done. When a priest passes away, there's several sacrifices that have to be done. There has to be a black ram that is slaughtered and kept at the door. So what they did was they went back and forth about what was needed and what can we cut corners on. Okay, so one of the mediators in all of this is they laid her out at different in different outfits at different times. This was the first day, so we're still on Thursday. This is the first day that they did lay her out, and she's in all white then with powder on her face. She's got her implements. Somebody is always sitting by Badua during the funeral, and this is a family member, as you can see, because all of the priest had to wear all white, but the family members was typical, either black and red or black. Now, this is Nana Aye, and she is a Nana AC priest. She lives in Adosso, But when Nana Oparebea passed away, she stepped in to be regent. In other words, to be the person that managed the shrine immediately after Nana Oparebea's death. Because at a place like the Okonade Shrine, they always have patients there. Sometimes they have patients on site that are staying there for long-term treatment. They have people coming and going for different things, so they couldn't leave it open. They had to have somebody that stepped in, okay? Now, Nana Aye constantly negotiated with the family, but then one time, the spirit of a ghost, I don't know whether this is the spirit of Badua or not, but this was the spirit of a ghost who actually stepped in and interceded to negotiate with the family. And as we already said, people don't mess with the shrines. When a shrine comes, they pay attention, and through the intercession of this particular ghost entity going through Nana Aye, they worked everything out so the family was on board with what was happening and what needed to be done. Okay, now we're still in stage 3. The spirit of the ghost has come. So this is the stage 3 then, is creating the ancestor itself. And this has to do with the shrines. And this is why all of these things had to be ironed out before we could actually do the sacred part. We could actually go to creating Okomfo Badua as a sacred ancestor, not only for the family, but for the priest community, okay? So then on Friday, this is when we have this severance ritual, okay? Now, the severance ritual is when a certain kind of food is made to sever participation of the Okomfo with the priests who are still living, okay? This is a requirement. That's why all of this other stuff with the family had to be worked out before we could get to this part, okay? And what they do is they cook a certain kind of food. They call it ghost food, okay? And it's served to the deceased person, and it's also shared out to fellow priests, okay? It consists of palm oil, roasted corn, expensive fish, like the ones from the Volta River. You can't get any cheap fish here, okay? So then the milled roasted corn is poured into hot water and stirred until it becomes solid. So it's like a solid, it's solid, but then you pour over that encantomere, or either okra added to the fish and the palm oil. So you have this, and when we take it up to the front where the deceased person is, and then we all go in turn, and we say something to the deceased person, and then we all take a bit of the food with our left hand and we offer it to the deceased person. And what we say when we do this, we're invoking the ghost spirit, and we say, take this food and go to your new place. We are not going to eat with you again. We shall not drink water with you again. We shall not drink wine with you again. Get your food and eat. Get your food and eat. Get your food and eat. If I see you again, it is only to help me. I have finished with you, oh. I'm sorry I don't have that in Tree, but that's basically the transition. So this was something that was required by all of the Okomfo that were there, is that we had to do the severance rites to sever ourselves from the departed priest at that particular time. Again, this is her close-up. That first day on Thursday. Friday is the day that we did the severance rituals. And Friday is also the day that priests actually give gifts to the deceased person. Okay? And that was a very, very elaborate ritual that was done. We go like in a single file line behind Nana Ayi, which was the chief organizer for the funeral. Okay, and that's what we did on that that Friday. We did the severance ritual, and then we gave her gifts. Okay. Okay, and then I'm gonna speed it up a little bit so we have time for questions. So there was another incident that happened during the funeral. I'm not gonna go over that right now. And it had to do with the relationship of one of Okomfo Badua's family members with her. So I'm not gonna go over that right now. Let's go to the next day, which I think is Saturday, which is the day of burial, but this is also the day that we give funeral gifts from the family to the deceased. Now, she did have a son that lived overseas. So the idea is that if you're living overseas, you might have more money to give. So they relied upon him a lot. He didn't come himself because of work, but he was able to send a family. He was able to send his wife, and he and his wife provided a lot of gifts. And that's what people are looking at too. How did they treat the deceased? Did they give a lot of gifts? Did they make a good display? That kind of thing. That increases people's status in the community when you can make a good display, particularly at this time. Okay. Now, let me see what the next slide is. This is the funeral negotiations that's going on between the Abusia painting and the ghost that Nana Yi possessed. Okay. Now, after the burial, what happens on Saturday? The burial happens at night, and the priest community did not go to the burial. It was strictly done by the family. But what we did was very interesting, because what we did was, as the burial was going on and the family was away, remember, they divided the space so that the inside of Okomfo Badua's compound was basically the space for the traditional priest, and where all of the family knew that these rituals had to go, and they had to go correctly, or they were not going to create the ancestor that they needed. So they reserved the space inside of the compound for the Okomfo and for those rituals, but then outside was the Christian component. They had bands out there, they had music, different kinds of things were going on in that space too, sometimes simultaneously, sometimes not at the same time. It just depended on what was going on that particular day. But the day that they took Okomfo Badua for burial, the priest community stayed back. That means the drummers stayed back, because we had a lot of different people, not just from the Asante area. They had people from Dumpon, they had people from other towns throughout Ghana that came, drummers, but the traditional community sat back and did what they call Anansi-sim. Okay, and I think Anansi-sim was sort of a way for the culture, the traditional community to sort of, you know, have a little bit of a break, because it's all been pretty heavy up until then. And you know, they're leaving the burial to the family, but Anansi Sam are like Anansi stories. And in this case, they were kind of raunchy, if you don't mind my saying. I mean, there were songs. What they did was we sat around a circle, and it's like nobody cared who was what, you know. Everybody just sit around in a circle. Everybody took a turn to bring an Anansi story or an Anansi song. And they were kind of raunchy because they talked about, let me see, what was one of the examples that they gave? If you don't mind my saying, Sebi Sebi. Okay. They said things like, they were funny. So the first story was a man wanting to steal his wife's underwear. That was the first story. And he wanted to steal her underwear to use it as a hat. Excuse me for saying. Okay, another one made fun of a man would put his thumb over his wife's private parts and things like that. So what this was sort of like a time when all the priest community could sort of relax, could sort of, you know, after all the rituals had been done, the burial had been done, this was sort of like a ritual drama thing that we were sort of like going through, okay? So the next day was the Sunday, and we had to do a lot of sacrifices that day because you know that death is very polluting. And so in order to rid ourselves of the pollution of death, we had to do sacrifices. We had to do cleansings. We did all kinds of things. That Sunday, we relaxed, we packed up, and then by Monday, we were headed back to our homes. And do y'all have any questions that you have at this particular point?
Palcho, this is Abimbola.
Mm-hmm.
I have two things. When I attended Nana Oparebea's funeral rites, when they got ready to remove the body, it was in the evening. They turned off all the lights, so no one can see where she was being taken.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Because she was a person of stature.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't want, see, even up until the time of burial, you're always having to protect the deceased from anything that could harm them or to harm the family or to harm the chances of this person going into successful ancestorhood and being able to help people from the other side. So yeah.
There also was a question in
In the chat.
In the chat, excuse me, I'm sorry. If someone's interested in asking a question, just raise your hand so I can recognize you.
How do I do that? Okay.
Just under the reactions.
Oh, okay.
But there, in the chat, there was Brother Kwesi Wally asked, "Are all the members of the Akom community have title?" And then there was another question of what types of gifts.
Oh, well, okay. Are all members of the Akom community have title? I'm not. Are you saying are they all priest or Achime, or is there anybody in the Akom community that is you know, I'm not sure if I understand.
Mepacho, this is Mensah Wali, Kwesi Wali.
Mm-hmm.
From appreciate your discussion and description of your experience, but you're referring to Okomfos and priests and priestess, and I was wondering if everyone in the Akan community has such titles, because, I mean, I've been involved with the Akan community. I may not be a priest or anything of that sort, but I'm interested in the ritual, and I don't know where I would fall in this.
You do not have to be an Okomfo. I described the Okomfo funeral because those were the funerals that I attended, but you do not have, you could have the same kind of ritual send-off and burial. You do not have to be an Okomfo. You do not have to have a title. It is to be shared by everybody. And that's why I wanted to bring this to the forefront, because we are all gonna have to climb the ladder of death, all of us. So this is something we need to start thinking about. We need to start looking ahead to how this is gonna happen in our community. You know, I mean, I'm even thinking, you know, I don't know how y'all feel about it, but we should have multiple conversations on these things, because as elders pass away, and even you don't have to be an elder. Suppose it's your child that's passing away, God forbid, or somebody else in your family that's involved in the culture, and you want to give them a traditional funeral. It doesn't really matter what your station is or your position is within the community, that you could still be, you know, buried in that way. You could still be honored in that way. You could still be, have all of the rituals that's going to create you as a benevolent ancestor. So that's something we really need to think about. And the reason why I got started thinking about it was, number one, going to all these funerals. And then my children started to say, Mommy, God forbid it should happen, but what if something happens to you? What should we do? So we need to start telling our children, our grandchildren, our family members, you know, that I don't care what, if I have this position in life, don't bring me to the AME church for burial. You know, you might bring me to a Christian space, but don't give me a Christian funeral. You see what I'm saying? So we have to sort of like start thinking about how we're going to organize this for all of our futures. Does that answer your question, Bob?
Very, very much so. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Madam.
Nana, Sister Okomfo Afua wanted to ask a question as well, and then there are a couple more questions in the chat. So I'm gonna allow her to go, and then I will read the questions in the chat box.
Okay.
Madasi, I wanted to find out what I was to ask you about. I heard that a lot of times people like Nana Oparebea and Papa Numo, that a lot of times they may let people think that they're buried in one particular place, but sometimes they will move them so no one really knows where they're actually buried, because they can take the dirt or try and dig up the body and take parts or something like that and use it for other stuff. So I was told that sometimes where people think they're buried, they're not really buried there. Is that
exactly?
Okay.
Exactly. And you've heard about the dancing coffins that they have going back on the day of the burial. They be dancing all over and you know, checking on witchcraft and this and that. I mean, it sounds very Egyptian, doesn't it? In terms of you don't want, it's a lot of secrecy. You see, I think in Egyptian times, now correct me if I'm wrong, there was a lot of secrecy involved in where the body was buried. And so what you're trying to do above anything else is to create that sacred ancestor and remove all the obstacles that's standing in the way of creating a sacred ancestor.
Madasi.
Nana Ama, you have another question by Sister Koshua, Nana Koshua Reed. She asked, why does the family only wear black and red? Please share more about how, why all the rituals elevate the deceased to become an ancestor.
Well, it's in terms of the rituals. Well, let me first talk about the cloth. I'm not an expert on that. I think in one of our other, maybe it was a Mindful Monday class.
Yeah, I think
I
Sister.
have talked about that.
Yeah, she's in the. I think she's in the room.
Who is it?
Okomfo Nayo. Yeah, she's in the room. You can unmute yourself.
Oh yeah.
And talk on this if you wish.
Hi, Nananum. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah. So, in terms of the color black, black is considered the color of mourning in Ghana. As to why they chose that color, I have not been able to find that answer. It's just the color. The red comes into play because it shows your close relationship with the person who's passed. So people will come wearing black. If you were close with the person, you will wear black and red. The more red you wear at the funeral, visually describes your closeness and your mourning at the funeral. So you will see people wear all red. You will see people with mostly red with a little black, and people are very conscious of it. You will also see a lot of brown that's being worn. So they may not wear black, but they will wear a dark brown. And if another color is brought forward, it's usually the priests who are wearing white at a funeral. If some priests wear black, but if a priest is wearing white, it's understood that that person, because of their shrine, is not wearing black or red. But they will usually have some sort of red on their person in small form to designate their closeness with the deceased. Mm-hmm. Related to important people of important stations, the secrecy around where the body is laid to rest in its final resting place is very, very important, because you want to secure the body even after death. They want to make sure that there is no stealing on the graves, because there's a lot of things that go into the casket with the person, that no one steals, that no one takes any body parts to use for rituals. And so sometimes what will happen, as the elders have spoken and said, that people will think that the body is in one place and it'll be in another. Sometimes they will even, as a part of the compound, if you're a priest and you have a big compound, many people are buried on their compound, and then they will put structures on top of it to prevent people from being able to get to the body in the gravesite. So I have been told and witnessed that they will break down a wall, put the body underneath the ground there, and then build a wall on top of it, or build a house on top of it to secure the resting place. But most large compounds have an area which is a secret space where the priest will say, when I pass, this is where I'm going to go, and what they want to have put on top of them. There are community grave sites, and there are ones that are known, and family areas, and then there are ones that are not known. And no one really, it's up to the family to keep up the grave site, to clean it off and all of these things. And many of them, some of them are deep inside the village, and some of them are right off the road, but they're really open to the public. And for those who have been to Ghana to certain markets, you see that human bones are available for sale. So the securing of the remains is very, very important.
Nana, there's also another question, and this is from Sister Fia Santua, which this session might not be appropriate for that type of question, but I'll ask it anyhow, and maybe that can be another topic of discussion. It says, can you speak about the instruction for family and
Kwesi, yeah? I thought about that again, so let's hold that off for just priests.
Okay. All right, no problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But that's something we all need to think about. too, like, okay. But
The
yeah,
other,
you're
the
right
other
about
question
that.
was from Sister Adjua. How long must one wait until anyone can speak about where the body was buried?
Mm. I
Okay,
don't,
so do you want me to take that one?
yes, please.
Okay, so usually what happens is when the person passes away, as Nana has said, the first word needs to go out to the Abusia Penin of the family. They need to be notified. Then the village chief needs to be notified of the death. Fines can come upon a family if the word goes out and the wailing has started and the community begins to find out, and the chief and the queen mother of the town are not made aware, so that this way they can come and be able to pay their respects. After those people, the Abusia Penin and the chief or the queen mother have been made aware, then it becomes public knowledge. You will hear the cries, you will hear the wailing, the communication will be going out to the families so that everybody will be made aware of the person's passing. As you can imagine, if you have someone that is of big stature, the ability to communicate that information may take a bit longer. So sometimes people have passed and it may take a day or two to notify the proper people. But if somebody's of big stature, it may take a little longer and people won't say anything. In the olden days, it used to take longer for the word to get out because they would wait a period of 3 days to make sure that the person is really passed away. As you can imagine, especially when you're talking about the ability for spirits to possess on people, any people, they want to make sure that before they say that somebody has passed, that they truly have passed. So there would be something called awake keeping that would happen. The person did not wake up in the morning. Awake keeping would happen. People would be around and close to make sure, is this person going to wake up? Are they going to be aroused? And once the death is truly confirmed, then the communication starts.
I told my children that. I said, please make sure I'm dead.
Mm-hmm.
I do not want.
There's another question. This is from Sister Koshua. Is it sacrilegious for a priest to be cremated? What happens if the rituals are not done for an Okomfo?
Who wants to take that one?
Okay. I can take it. So traditionally, the priests are not cremated. Traditionally, rites are done. The body is prepared and kept in its natural state to allow for the ascension of the spirit to become an ancestor. And this is not just priests, this is everyone in the community, right? So this is not priest specific. However, in Ghana now, you are seeing more people being embalmed, being refrigerated, but particularly for priests, the belief is that the spirit, there is a blockage that does not allow the spirit to ascend. And that journey is a long journey. And so we believe in reincarnation, right? That we are connected, that there's a circle of life. And so the whole point is that when you come into this world, you come with a purpose for right now, but you also have other purposes that you have to fulfill. And you don't want to stop that. I haven't really heard a lot, and maybe somebody else can speak to about that, but it is firmly believed all across Ghana that you should not be cremated, that people should be buried, and that these rites should happen up until the funeral and even after the funeral to make sure that the spirit properly ascends and settles in the land of Nsamando.
Yes. So, and it comes in stages. After that initial burial, then you might have an 8-day, correct me if I'm wrong, there might be an 8-day, and then it's a 40-day, 40-day rituals, and then 1 year, and then it's up to the family how often they want to commemorate that person's death.
Yes.
Yes.
So, a partial to everyone. We have 15 minutes left in this session. So I want to be respectful for everybody's time. So we'll put a pause on the questions. We'll let Nana Ama complete her presentation. And if people are willing to hang around after we get to our 8 o'clock hour, we'll leave the session open, and of course, you can talk until your heart's content.
Okay, Maria, I'm finished.
Oh,
I'm
you
finished
finished?
with the presentation. There is another question somebody has. Is it okay if the priest wants a small funeral?
Yes.
So I'm not sure about that one. So Nayo, do you want to take that one? I'm not sure.
Right. So the funeral doesn't have to be a large funeral, especially if we're thinking about here. There are a lot of things that are done in Ghana that here we would have to do a little differently. The priest can want a lot of things, but what we realize is that what you want when you're living may not happen when you pass, right? People are going to come when they hear the call. The idea is that this is an opportunity for healing for the entire family and for the entire community, right? They celebrate your life. They celebrate the impact that you made on your community. But it doesn't have to be large or grand or big. In Ghanaian culture, because people look at funerals to represent people's stature, to represent the impact, they look more closely at it. But we don't have to frame it in the same way. What is most important is that the rites and the rituals are performed so that the spirit can properly ascend and then be able to come back and support in a spiritual form and maybe even be reincarnated to come again. That's what's most important. And that all of the affairs are in order and the rights for any of those other things are also taken care of.
Mm-hmm. Affairs in order. That's the main thing. When my youngest daughter visited me a few weeks back, she set me down. And when we went over this, I don't know whether you could see it. A last will, she insisted, a last will and testament. And this is something that my family is insisting that I have in place. It also tells you your 5 wishes. You can, all kinds of things. This isn't the will itself. This is just sort of like a workbook for you to put certain things in place. Do you have a DNR? Do you have, all of this? That kind of thing. Death is guaranteed for all of us. So we need to not treat it as something that we have to shun away from and be afraid of, because our family is looking to us to make sure that they are prepared at this time of crisis when they are most vulnerable, that they don't have to try to figure out, what did mommy want? What did daddy want? What did, what does my grandmother want? This is a very kind of trying time, and decisions should be made as much as possible ahead of the time of the crisis so people can be best prepared. That kind of thing. So, somebody else said, are people placed in a casket or directly in the ground? You want to take that one, Naya? As far as I know, they're a casket. Yeah, there's a casket. Because, you have all these casket makers in Ghana where they make the casket into, to reflect your position. They'll put, if it's a fisherman, they'll put you in a casket shaped like a boat. Or like I said, Numo was in a casket shaped like a leaf because he was a master herbalist. So, in Ghana, I know that that's what they do, but it's really up to the preferences for you and your family. I told them, I said, don't spend a whole lot of money for a casket for me. That doesn't make sense. Just, keep it simple, keep it, that's why I'm going to give them instructions so that they will know exactly what to do. Because I would rather for any funds that I'm able to leave them to go towards, helping in their lives and helping their families as opposed to, putting into a lavish display. As long as everybody gets to eat, that's all I'm concerned about.
We have another question from Okomfo. who says, how long do you have to wait before you can call the person an ancestor?
Niall, that sounds like you.
The answer. So for that question, I'm not really sure, right? The journey starts immediately when the person passes, but the completion of the journey, I'm not sure, because there's so many rites that continue. That's a great question, and I can definitely get on the phone and start asking. Unfortunately, you have to ask several people to see if you get the same answer, to say that this is what the answer is. But I definitely feel like, you know, that's a question I never thought of before, to ask exactly when. I know that from the beginning, when they call the name of the person, they call the name of the person, putting force and energy towards that person's ascension. But when is the journey exactly complete? I am not sure.
Well, I mean, I know as a priest, like, we really don't start like adding a person's name into our libations until definitely after the 40 days. So maybe even after a year is when you really would start calling that person to as part of your ancestral prayer, or when you're praying to your shrine. So so I mean, it's a good question too. I mean, but if, like, as a priest, for me, it would probably be at least a minimum of a year before I would add someone who passed to my libation. So which gives them the time to get to the land of Insamando, to get them set up so they can start doing the work. So 40 days is a little quick. They're still traveling. They're still getting established. They're still feeling their array around in this new place, and they're finding their station before I would start petitioning them for help on this side. So normally I would think probably about a year would be probably an appropriate time, but I don't have an exact answer.
Pastor, this is Okomfo Modun. I have to agree with you. Or I've always heard a year. You have, you know, the 40-day rites, and then, and even in that first, like that first few days or something, that I'm told, I have heard, let me take back, I've heard and been told that the person's spirit makes rounds to people. At times they do that, but you don't call them, which was shared with me. You don't call them, like you said, for help for a year. Oh, Nana Kwabena.
Yeah, hi. How are you doing? Yeah, Madhuri. I'm just thinking that maybe the establishment of some African burial societies in different cities might be something for us to consider. People can pay into it. They can, the saying that you had none of what's with will and testament, what people want to have at their funerals and stuff, that they would pay into it, and then the society would guarantee that they would get the funerals that they want.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we've already started having some conversations about creating a Akom Kese burial society. So this is something that's in the work. At one of the last Akom Keses, we talked about this very thing in terms of people who want to be buried in the traditional way, and how we can galvanize our community to be able to do that. So if anyone on this call is definitely interested in that, please reach out to me or Koshua or any of the board members of Akom Kese so that we can start planning and working towards that end.
Yes, I agree.
No, me Paucho. I think it's important to mention that some people think that if they have a will that everything's taken care of, but you need to have a document stating what your plans are for end of life prior to the will, because the will is read after the person is buried. So you want your family to know how you want to be buried.
Exactly. This little,
That's a very important distinction, because some people don't realize that.
yeah, that's true. Absolutely.
Can I also just add, just because this is my area of business as well professionally, just it's important to look at your state and your state laws. In New York State, there is a document, right? It's a disposition form that you can fill out. When you pass away, your healthcare proxy is no longer valid because that speaks for you when you're alive. Your power of attorney sits up there. It also expires when you pass away. And so sometimes you may tell people what you want. So let's say I say to Auntie Ama, I want to have this and this and this and this. When I pass away, my remains don't belong to Auntie Ama. My remains belong to my next of kin, whoever that is. My husband, if I'm married, or my wife, if I'm married. My children, if I'm not married. If I have no wife or children, then it goes to my parents. And so what if they don't agree with what I have told someone, right? So in New York State, there's a disposition of remains form that if you fill that out on your passing, your remains will legally go to that person and not to your next of kin, right? Without that, a funeral home or a funeral, a mortician will not be able to execute and do anything to the body because they can be sued, all right? Because the remains don't belong to that person. So when you go to make funeral arrangements, one of the things they want to know is how you're related to that person. And they want to make sure that they're speaking to the right person, even if you have all of the money. Now, the funeral here is a business interaction. So then you have to figure out what is it that you're going to be paying for. And once you figure that out, then whoever pays for the funeral actually gets the death certificates, right? So it's very important to know your state laws. I can't speak to the other states, but to ask and find out if there's a disposition of remains form. Make sure that the person who legally will be in possession of your remains is in agreement with you regarding what you want to have done. Because you can have a lot of money. It still goes to that person. They decide what happens. So I often see, you know, as a nurse administrator, families get into big disputes around that and not understanding that legally they have nothing to stand on.
Mm-hmm. Nana Enyo, did you have a question? I can't hear you. Nana? Okay.
Okay, after 40 days, that's the whole point of doing the 40 days. You're considered an ancestor.
You, Mate.
Well, what did she say? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
She said after the 40 days, that's the whole point of doing the 40 days. You're considered an ancestor.
That means that after 40 days, you can begin to call on the name of the deceased because they're now an ancestor.
That's correct.
Is that what you're saying, Nana?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You're just saying after the 40 days, you can call on them because they are an ancestor at that point.
That 40 days is the time that they're being, that's 40 days after the
burial. Okay, after the burial.
Days after, and then when the 40-day rituals are done, they're considered an ancestor.
Yo, Madasi.
Coach, does that answer your question? Is how do you know our ancestors successfully reached the land of the ancestors? You can unmute yourself if you like.
Yeah, greetings, Napacho. Yeah, I was just curious if there's, just what evidence do we have, thinking in this Western mind, that the person or our ancestors is successfully an ancestor, that we can call upon them to intervene and so forth in our lives. Because I think about our ancestors here in America that didn't have these rituals done. We call them. So does that mean they're not ancestors? Just, expound further.
I think if you've done the rituals and you've done those things that you want, so as a priest, as you're doing the rituals, and you're going to know if those rituals were successful or not. But I'm going to defer to my elders to answer that.
Okay, Nana Enyo.
Yes,
Nana?
I'm here. Can you hear us?
Your sound is bad, but we'll try to.
Many fans believe after he passed the 40 days, he has settled with the ancestors. That's why we here, we remember them at 40 days. So after they settle, they are now ancestors to be called upon. Is there a sign you look for that they've done it? Well, the rituals, the moment you do the 40 days for the person, you realize he has settled down with his elders. because the sacrifices will show you that he is settled. So that's why we remember 40 days after the burial. After he's buried, he's no more here, nobody will see the person again. So we come from the day he is buried. 40 days, then we say he has settled with the elders. Always call them in our prayers. So the 40 days is very important to do for the person who passed away.
Yes.
So that is what we account. After 40 days, then we start calling the person so that whatever is good there, you can send it to us. The disease that took care away, you should prevent it that a member again in the family. So that is how we do it. The 1 year is the belongings of the ancestor that the family members share. We meet, we pray, and then we share. Everyone has to take something away. That's the 1 year celebration. Sharing of the person who passed. And we share. After that, we wait till 3 years. Then we do a funeral. Maybe the children that time didn't have money. So 3 years they didn't have money, then they do the funeral again. Then after 3 years, we wait to 10 years. Then we do the final funeral. After 10 years, no account member will sit down on any funeral of your past person. 10 years is done. You don't do anything for the person again. 10 years is the final. My 10 years of my mother will be 25th of September. And I'm praying I'll be part of it because I can never remember my mother calling people to sit down. I can call her, but not call anybody to sit down on my mother.
So just to try to recap everything, I think he said that you have the 40-day, then you have a 3-year ritual, then there's a 10-year ritual, correct?
And then after the 10 years, you're done.
You finished. Okay. All right.
Nana Kwabena Brown.
Nana Kwabena Brown wants to say something, and after that, we will close the session. And then, of course, if people want to stay around, they're welcome to.
My question is, if a person is of extremely bad character, is that person given less rights, more rights? Is that person taken to be honored as an ancestor? What do you do with somebody who's just the worst person possible to other people in the family when they die?
Is that an open question, or do you?
Yeah, it is open.
Daniel?
Do you pray to the one that really was so disruptive and did terrible things, or what?
Yeah. Daniel?
Everybody is a good person.
We can't hear. Okay. Okay, wait a minute. While you get your sound back, I'm going to go to Omodu. Can't hear.
I was saying the same thing that you were. I couldn't hear.
Oh, okay.
All right, so
Thank
I'm
you.
going to try to recap. So he said the 40-day.
Okay, wait a minute. And Nio had her hand up.
All right, I'm sorry.
Okay. So the way that I was taught was that there are definitely requirements to becoming an ancestor, right? So someone has to die a good death, right? Not any unclean disease, a bad accident, suicide, someone who's not been considered or accused of being a witch. And then there are separate rites that are done specifically for somebody who dies during childbirth. When somebody is not of good character and hasn't lived their life well, they are not celebrated in the same way, right? There's certain things that are done, like all of these rituals, to make sure that that person is remembered. So the person has already reserved their place as an ancestor. They are there but how we relive their legacy here changes based on the character of the person. So they're going to make sure that the person is at rest, that funeral rites are done, but they're not going to continue to honor that person's spirit because they did not live a good life. So what they would say is, this person has not led a life worth imitating or worth remembering, right? So in terms of doing outward rituals and calling on this spirit to come and help, you would not do that for someone who has not lived a good life. And if we don't remember and call that the name of that person and continue to give sacrifice or give eto and all of these things, or give libation, the spirit has less vim or less energy in this place. So that's how, in particular, they deal with that. The family still is under obligation to make sure that the funeral rites are done. But the story is told. People are very clear as to whether or not someone's behavior has led to their own death. And there is no pity or remorse for the death of that person. You won't see the crying. You won't see the same sort of turnout for that person, but the rites are still done.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So now, Nana Inyo in the comments says 40 days, 1 year, 3 year, and 10 year are the years for doing the funeral rites. So it is 8:04. So what I would like to do is officially bring this session to a close. I would like to say Madasi to Nana Ama for giving us this wonderful information. When we first did the Akom Kese, I wanted her to talk, so I'm very, very happy. I actually read her dissertation, and I was so excited to read it. And I'm like, this is wonderful information. It's like, you're the foremost expert in this right now, so we really need to get this to the people. She always shakes her head like, nah, get out of here, crazy. But very, very thankful for this.
It's a good beginning. It's a good beginning because there's so much. This culture is so much. It's a beginning. That's all we can do is keep at it.
Keep studying it. Yeah.
Keep studying.
So tomorrow we will have the priest only meeting. We're going to be talking about the role that the priests are going to play in eldership. And then we also are having Auntie Ama, Nana Kwesi Ajiman's wife, is going to be doing a presentation on traditional foods, cooking. And if anybody ever had her food, they know she's a wonderful cook. She cooks some really great stuff, katumbre, alfred soup, whatever, you name it. It's all awesome. So we welcome you to that session tomorrow. I hope everybody's enjoying the lineup of speakers that we're presenting to you, and you'll find this information informative. And again, we definitely want to, continue these conversations and continue to grow what we're doing as a people, as a culture, continue to learn all those forgotten lessons that we have experienced as a result of being here in this country. So again, thank you.
I have one thing to say. I put my email in the chat. If anybody wants the entire dissertation, email me and I can send it to you.
Also, I want to remind everyone that tomorrow and for the rest of the week, when you enter into the room, if you could just put next to your name which session you want to attend, session A, the first session listed, or session B, the second session listed, that will help us to quickly put you into the breakout rooms. Thank you.
Okay.
So with that being said, we will conclude. Everyone, you're welcome to stay on. If you need to leave, you can leave. If you want to hang out and just talk, you're welcome to do that as well. But this will officially conclude this session. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Well done. This was great.
Very nice. I have a question for the person who talked about the disposition of remains form. Where would you find that?
Let me look and see if it's available online. I'll do a search right now. Give me 1 second.
Okay. Anaya. Thank you, Naya.
Yeah, it's me.
I had a book that I wanted to share too, that has full of blank pages for you to inform your loved ones of everything you want done and how you want to be buried, everything. it has a quite unique name. It's called I'm Dead, Now What? It's, I was very much attracted to it because of the comic name, but it really gives, every page of it tells everything that you want to do, you want your family to know, so they don't have to find it. All of your accounts that you need to have in there. Now, certain things will change, but you can figure out how to fill it in. But I bought it off of Amazon after I heard about it, and it really takes care of all of your business. So you can make sure that everything is done for everything that you want to be done. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
No, me Palcho. Last year at Akom Kese, we given a book, Personal Planning Guide. If people were at the Akom Kese last year, you may remember that this was also given out. Similar.
Yeah, it was nice. It was a nice job done by Koshua and the rest of the gang.
Nana no me Paucho. So I just looked. If you do a search for New York State disposition of remains, it's a free form. It's in English and in Spanish. So if you're in another state, just put your state name in and then just put in disposition of remains form.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Nayo me Palcho, does it matter if your next of kin is in another state?
No, it's just
Okay.
it's important to know the state in which you are in, so that this way the funeral home will know that the remains don't belong to your next of kin, but they belong to the person or the agent, as they call it, that you designate.
Pacho,
Yes.
I wanted to, so can the rituals be done retroactively?
Okay, so you asked a very important question. I don't know if Auntie Ama wants to take this one. I think it's important for us to realize and acknowledge that while we love and practice and have embraced Ghanaian culture, that we come from a larger pool, right? And we also have to respect and honor that. In the Akan tradition here in America, I've not seen a formal accepted practice of how we bridge that gap, right? It's like you're leaving one, you cross the ocean, and you enter into the next one. While other cultures, like the Yoruba culture I'm thinking about, has developed ways for people in the diaspora to bridge that gap. And I think that that is a wonderful topic for discussion, so that you can figure out, people can figure out what they're comfortable in doing. And I think that is something that we have to acknowledge. When we are doing our rituals for Akwesi, it's important to understand that that's our opportunity to uplift our ancestors. But if you're feeling like there needs to be rites or rituals that are done, that maybe, within your house, with your teachers, you can have that discussion and decide how you want to commemorate them, how you want to ritualize it for your family. But I think as a whole, we need to make sure that we're not forgetting our own blood lineage as we are uplifting our culture and tradition.
I don't know, me Palcho. Sometimes the ancestor will come and let you know what they want you to do. They will come to you in a dream, or somebody will be doing a reading, or somebody will be doing some work. I got all kinds of different messages from Baba after he passed. Somebody that I didn't even know knew him, because she didn't realize that he was my husband. She was doing a ritual and he gave her a message to give to me, so, they come in a whole lot of different ways. And sometimes you have to do things for them because they're not at rest. You may have to do a ritual after these different periods we're talking about so that they can rest. And a lot of times they'll come and let you know. Either they'll dream, like I said, through dreams or readings or whatever, they'll let you know if they need something done. So that's one of the answers.
And the other thing that we have to do is utilize the shrines that we have, right? So here we have access to Nana AC. That's her realm. That's what she does, right? So, maybe a good starting point is consulting Nana AC around the things that may be giving you some questions or unrest, so that she can support you in finding what needs to be done. But we really need to begin to be more proactive and accessing our shrines in a different way to help fill in the gaps, asking them the questions that we need answers to, and having them give us the information so that we can move forward. Because when you ask the question, the information will come.
Nana Kwabena?
I was just saying that one thing that's to be thought about is just like on any anniversary, like a birthday or a death day, to do something for your ancestors. Like my mom, I cook for on her birthday every year. I cook for her. I'm not saying everybody else should do that, but it's something to think about. Yeah, do something regularly for them on either a birthday or a death day.
Any other questions, comments?
Anna Mipalcho, I want to make a comment. I think there's a folk tale, the cowtail switch. I don't know if anybody else is familiar with this particular story, but it speaks about a hunter who disappeared. He didn't come home. And when the child that the mother was carrying when he disappeared asked, "Where's my father?" There was a whole event. All of the siblings went to find him, and they were able to reconstruct his body, and they put him back together. And then he decided he wanted to make a cowtail switch to thank the most important person who was significant in bringing him back. And they all argued about who was eligible for this beautiful cowtail switch that he made. And he gave it to one who asked for him. And it reminds us to call the names of the people who were dear to us. In our tradition right here, we don't name our children after somebody we name our children after an ancestor who did great things, because we want to embellish their character. We want them to, you're still calling that name. That's very significant. That's why America has all these names all over the place. They talk about us worshiping ancestors, but that's why they have the presidents on the bills and the bridge named after this one and the street named after that. That's why we have to fight to get the streets named after people that we want the streets named after. If we live in a community, we shouldn't have some racist murderer, oppressioner that's the name on our block. We should have somebody whose spirit we want to embellish and lift up. So, we have a lot of traditions right here that speak to what our ancestors, like you said, we're in America, but we still maintain a lot of those traditions.
True that. Okay.
Badua, thank you so much. I'm gonna pull out. God bless everybody. See you all tomorrow.
Okay then.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you. Same to you, Baba.
Yes, God bless you there.
Bye.
Amen. Shalom.
Okay.
Thanks, Alma. That was so informative.
Thank you so much.
You.
No problem.
And yes, I am in that picture.
Yes, you are.
Yes, I am.
Afiba, that was several pounds ago for all of us.
Girl, let's not go there, okay?
We go way back.
We were babies then.
Way back. Thanks, everybody. See y'all tomorrow, I guess.
Okay.
Thank you, Nana.
Thank you. Get some rest, y'all.
I'm gonna try.
Thanks for everything.
Thanks, Nana. Okay. But thanks, Enyo. Nayo, Nayo.
Anana Badu.
Thanks, Kwesi. Bye. Thank you, Numa Tigre Kwabana. Papa. Remember Papa.
Yes, always.
The best
Always.
of the best.
Agreed. Agreed. Nana, I'm going to grab your email. I'd like your dissertation.
Okay, you have the email, right?
I'm going to try and take it from this thing somehow.
Okay. You can always get in touch with me on Facebook.
I'll do that.
Get in touch with me on Facebook and you can, we'll hook it up that way.
Thank you.
Okay, then.
All right.
Talk to y'all later.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.